Hi, my name is Avital Balsam. I'm a speech and language pathologist. I have advanced certification in DIR or floor time, which is a methodology that's used to promote social and emotional development in children. And the reason I made this video today is I've just seen on social media parents so stressed and worried about this time with their kids and wondering if they're going to measure up and what they should be doing for their kids. Should they be scheduling their days? And do the parents need to be replacing their children's teachers and therapists? And just really worried about the type of job they're doing and if they're doing a good enough job. And that really inspired me to make this video because I consider this time, while it's a really sad time and people are very sick, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for parents to use this time to really connect with their children and to help their children gain developmental skills that they would not be able to gain if they were still in their structured situations in school and in their extracurricular activities. Kids today are so structured. From the time that they're young toddlers, 2 years old, we send them off to school. School hours get longer and longer, and then there's aftercare or after school activities, extracurricular activities, practices. Kids are structured from the moment they wake up, it seems like, till the time they go to sleep. And they have so little opportunity to just be kids and to just play. And what this does to kids is it teaches them learned helplessness, that I am not going to be able to know how to fill my own time. Other people need to tell me what to do, when to do, how to do it. Now it's time to draw. Now it's time to play with puzzles. Now it's time to play outside. Everything is structured, and the adults will tell you how to do it. And so this really breeds learned helplessness, and that plus the screens and the devices that kids are so exposed to anytime they have a free moment or they get a little whiny, then a device comes into, and that breeds more of that learned helplessness, that I'm not going to be able to know what to do with that feeling of, oh, what do I do next? So, somebody's going to come in and save me, whether it's a screen, a device, or an activity that somebody has structured for me to spend my time on. And the problem with this is that for kids who have historically always been able to make their own fun and fill their own time, kids are supposed to be guided by their instinct. Kids do not plan ahead for how to fill their free time. Unlike adults, we do that because for adults, our development is complete. Kids are being guided by their development. Their development tells them what they should be doing at any moment in time. That happens by instinct. So to take a very easy example of that, if you think of a little baby who gets up and starts, trying to walk, that baby, it's not in his schedule. It's not something he planned ahead. Obviously, it's something that his development is just guiding him to do it. He's just programmed to keep development moving forward. And kids are doing that at all ages. So whether it's a toddler jumping in a mud puddle who's guiding the development of his sensory integration by doing that, or it's a 9-month-old throwing a toy off of his, or throwing food off of his high chair, who's being guided by his cognitive developmental need to explore cause and effect and gravity, or whether it's a preschooler who's building a toy gun out of Legos, and he's doing that because he is guided by his developmental need to explore his fears and his feelings and his aggressive feelings, which are a normal and typical part of human nature for all of us. And it's important for a preschooler who doesn't have the type of outlets that adults have to speak with a therapist. The way that they process their emotions is through play. So when kids are doing all of these things, or whether it's an older kid, a school-aged child who's in the kitchen making a mess, making an inedible cake recipe, and that child is exploring executive function, how does it feel to make a plan and carry out that plan, and how does it feel to act like a grown-up and create something. So each of these kids is being propelled by their developmental need to master a particular skill or promote their development in a particular way at a particular time. And nobody has to tell them what to do. It's just programmed right into them. So historically, nobody ever had to show kids how to play. They just played, except for certain children who have special needs. But right now I'm discussing for typical children, they're supposed to just be able to play. And that has been taken away from children inadvertently in our desire to educate them and entertain them. We have scheduled every minute of their lives. But now all of that is gone. There is no structure, no school, no play dates, no extracurriculars, and it's a sad time, but it's also a time of opportunity for parents, because now as parents we can use this time to help children gain the skills that will promote their development, that will make them move forward far faster in their development than they could ever do during the time when they were so structured and during the time when they were spending all of their time in adult planned activities. The reason I made this video is I really just want to encourage parents to use this time of no structure as an opportunity. First of all, to help your children feel okay, feel safe, and feel loved. This is a scary time. Adults are panicking. Important relationships for the children have been put on hold. So obviously, it seems to me that the first important role that you have as a parent that you can do uniquely as a parent is to help your children feel safe and loved, and that you're there for them. And then after that, you can take this wonderful opportunity to connect with your children, deepen your bond with your children, and also help them have the time and learn how to use the time that they now have available to them to let their instinct guide them. Their instinct will tell them what their developmental need is at the time. And this is just a great opportunity for them. Now, I'm going to be talking first more about typical children or children who are closer to typical or higher functioning. And then later on in the video, I will discuss children with special needs who have more specific considerations. But please watch both parts if you have a child with special needs, because everything I'm going to be saying in the first half of the video is going to be applicable, but just at a more emphasized level in the second half of the video, because all of the needs that children have for unstructured time and how parents can help them during that unstructured time is not only as true for children with special needs, but it's even more true. And children with special needs may have their time even more structured and have less time for this unstructured play. Even when they're in school, all of their, a lot of their school hours may be very structured by the teacher. So it's really a great opportunity for parents to help their child with special needs learn these skills that are so much more important for them even than for a child with typical needs. So also I want to point out that I'm going to be talking more, a lot of the examples I'm going to be giving are younger children. Just the topics that I'm going to be discussing lend themselves to giving examples for younger children, but I've used these methods with children up to teenagers and have coached parents to use them successfully with children up to teenagers. So you can always take each example that I'm giving and just change it. So if I'm giving an example of a child, two children fighting over a toy, you can just imagine two teenagers fighting over an Xbox and use the same methodology. So when kids are engaging in play, obviously if it's pretend play, they're using their imagination, their creativity. They're very often making up a story. There's a mommy, there's a daddy, they're going to the store. These are the building blocks for later on when children are going to be asked to write a story with a beginning, middle, and end, or come up with your own idea for a project. So this is where children learn their creativity, and that's the reason that children are so drawn to it, because they need to be doing that work in order to grow their ability to be creative, which is so crucial to grow during childhood. Besides their creativity, when children are playing, they are working on their emotional regulation and their awareness of their emotions. Because when children play, their play is filled with emotional themes. If you watch them playing, you're going to see bad guys and good guys. You're going to see nurturing. You're going to see aggression. You're going to see vulnerability. You're going to see a lot of emotional themes in their play. Anger, jealousy, sadness. It's going to be emotionally very rich. And the reason for that is that children use play to explore and to master the emotions that are coursing through them in their real life, in the part of their life when they're not playing. And they need that time to process all their emotions, to process, I was feeling, when mommy was holding my baby sister, I was feeling a really aggressive feeling. I felt like I wanted to choke my baby sister. And I was feeling really jealous, and I'm not sure what that feeling is. So I need to explore and understand that feeling. But children are not going to sit and tell you all of that. They're not going to be able to have an appointment with a therapist to discuss those feelings, get to the bottom of it, and try to figure it out. They need play to figure it out. So play is their time. And then that child, if that's the emotional thing that they're working through, they're going to play with the dolls. And then maybe something aggressive is going to happen with the doll. Maybe they're going to have something bad happen to the doll. And then they're going to experiment with, how does it feel during play? Like in real life, I wanted to choke my baby sister. I didn't do it. I saved it for playtime. Now let me see how it feels during playtime if I take the baby and throw her to the ground and she cracks her head. And now I feel, that felt good. Now I feel a little bad about it. So maybe now the baby gets to go to the doctor, because in pretend play, the wonderful thing is you can vent, you can act out your aggression, and then you can make up for it. So now it's all magical, right? So now the baby can go to the doctor and feel all better, and now I can bring out my nurturing side in play. And I also love my baby. I have both of those feelings, and they're conflicting and it's confusing. But now I can take care of the baby, I can feed the baby. So the child is able to act out her full range of emotions that she has towards her baby. And this is just her baby sister. This is just as an example, through play. But what happens to a child who doesn't get that opportunity? A child who doesn't get that opportunity is more likely in real life to be aggressive, or is more likely to be emotionally just withdrawn, out of touch, not aware of their feelings, maybe kind of like whiny or crabby. It's a child who's not doing the emotional work that children are meant to do. The problem that we're faced with in our culture is that children get so little time for this, not as much time as they need. They need a lot of time for it. And that's why, you give them a minute and they're back to it. So children need so much time for it, and now we have the opportunity. We have the opportunity to give them this time, and it doesn't. The amazing thing about play is that it works on so many things all at the same time. So the child's working on their creativity. They're working on their executive function as they plan what's going to happen and where it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. They're working on their emotional regulation, as I mentioned before. They're working on their logical thinking because they need to plan, if this happens, then what would happen next? So they're just working on so many skills at the same time that are going to move their development forward in a much more powerful way than any fact or information that they can learn in school. And schools are very information based. So children are learning ABCs, shapes, colors, or you get older, math facts, history facts, just a lot of facts, and facts are good and interesting, but they're not what moves development forward. What moves development forward is a change in how the brain is thinking and working. So when you learn to process your emotions, that's moving your development forward. You become more of an emotionally aware thinker. Or when you are improving your executive function skills as you plan out your play themes, that's really moving development forward. And all of this doesn't only happen through pretend play. And as kids get older, it may be a little bit less pretend play, more and more so other types of play. But kids who are given enough time, boys given enough time, might plan a very complex sports game with the balls and how you throw the ball, and have all sorts of rules. If you do this with the ball, this will happen. If you do that with the ball, something else will happen. And given enough time, they can be really creative. But what we do instead is we structure them. Now you're going to play soccer. Everybody for the next 45 minutes is only going to be trying to kick this ball into a goal. That's it. There are no other rules. There's nothing else to do. You just need to follow along with what the coach is telling you. And so all of that is removed now. So now it's a kid and a ball and his siblings, and let's see what happens. And this is their chance to do what kids have always been doing, which is to figure out what's supposed to happen next. Now, our kids have been overly structured for such a long time and for so much of their day. And when they're not being structured, they've been exposed to so many devices and screens that are also encouraging them to have that learned helplessness and think that they cannot think for themselves, they cannot stimulate themselves, that it may take some time before they're really ready to regain that confidence that they know what to do with their time. I mean, some kids can just jump right into it, but for other kids it will take longer, especially kids who've been on a lot of screens and devices. And you'll hear a lot of bored and, I don't know what to do next. And what to do if that happens? Well, there are a lot of ideas circulating over social media of things that kids could do, and activities to spark their interest, and those are great to pull out as needed. What I would suggest to parents is don't make a schedule for your child's day from 9 to 4 to replace school and fill it up with all these different activities and feel that you have to be their fun maker. Ideally, kids are going to be filling up as much of their time as possible with their own ideas, because if it's their ideas, then it's moving their development forward in a much more powerful way than if it's your idea. It's okay if it's your idea or an idea you pulled off social media, but it's much better if it's their idea. That's their executive function. That's their creativity. Or it's their emotional themes that they're trying to work on. So always prioritize their initiative wherever possible, but be there, be available with other ideas that will get them thinking, oh, these are the types of things I could be doing with my free time. But once you see them take off, take a step back, The game doesn't have to go exactly as it was described, on your chat group. It doesn't have to follow the rules that you had in mind. It can go wherever it goes. Just go with the flow. And if one idea sparks another, don't have in mind, after this game, we're going to play the next game. Use it when you need to. But let go of that need for structure and order that we have as adults that kids have much less of. Kids need some predictability and routine in their day, but they don't need the amount of structure and order that we as adults need. We as adults need a lot of structure and order because we have a lot of responsibilities. We are not being guided by our development. And our development is mostly complete. So when we have free time, we need to think and plan, like, what are we going to do from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11? How are we filling our day? And if we don't do that, we just end up vegging on our phones. We really don't know what to do. But for kids, it's really the opposite. Kids bring disorder and chaos into the world. That's their contribution because they are moving their development forward, and development is messy. It's not linear, it's not planned, it doesn't go in any particular order. It's one thing one day, 1 minute, another thing the next minute, and they need to follow that uneven path. It could be really important to be playing with dolls 1 minute, and then when they catch sight of the puddles, it could be more important to be jumping into those puddles, and their development is guiding them, and we have to let their development guide them. So we may have to, for kids who've been overly structured, we may have to give them more time, and we may have to be okay with hearing on board, as much as it's hard to hear as a parent, but to accept their feelings of boredom. Those feelings are real. We, as adults, created that learned helplessness in them. Don't be angry at them for it. Don't be frustrated. I know it's frustrating, but try not to be. Instead, be there with them and support them and accept their feelings and say, yes, it is hard to know what to do. That is a hard feeling. And you can offer them some of those ideas that you see on, so you can say, would you like me to offer you an idea? I have some ideas of how we could spend our time. And also give them a little space. Watch and see if they come up with something on their own, which would be even more ideal. Sibling rivalry is a big question that a lot of parents have. What do I do when my kids are fighting? And a lot of the reason that parents are driven to structure their children's time is so to prevent sibling rivalry, because if the kids are just hanging out together, then inevitably fights start developing, parents get really stressed out, and everybody gets really upset, and it just kind of goes downhill. So here's what I want to say about sibling rivalry. And this, I think, might be a little surprising to people or not, I don't know. But siblings and kids are supposed to fight because children are working on basic interaction skills that hopefully we as adults have already developed. We as adults don't need to be fighting. We could be, we do fight, but we don't need it for our development. Children need to be fighting because they need to develop their conflict resolution skills. They haven't developed them yet. They need to develop assertiveness. They need to know, when do I give in? When do I not give in? Learn empathy, learn flexibility. All of these things happen not by parents dictating, you should feel bad for your sister, or you should give in to your sister, you should be more flexible, or you should be more assertive, or you should work out your differences. It happens through practice. And practice means fighting. If they're not fighting, they're not practicing. So if kids are not fighting at all, they're not practicing these skills. And the more that they fight, the more that they work on these skills. So really, parents should not look at it as a failure or something bad if they see their kids fighting. But kids need, in order for the fighting to be something useful and helpful to the development of the children, a lot of the time, especially as they're learning these skills, they're going to need the adults to be really involved. But adults are going to be involved not in a way of solving the problem for the children, not in a way of letting the children know who's right, who's wrong, who needs to say sorry, who needs to be praised for giving in. That's not the role of adults, because if you do that, you take away all of the work that the children should be doing in learning how to resolve conflicts and learning when do I feel I should be assertive? When do I feel I should be giving in? What does empathy feel like? What does flexibility feel like? When all of those things are dictated by adults, they're not really happening for the child. So here again is where it's not the outcome that matters, it's the process of engaging in a conflict with a sibling and learning from that conflict happens when a parent is sitting with the children involved. So let's just take an example of two children, Moshe and David, who are fighting over a toy. And the parent comes in not angry, not frustrated, not annoyed, but just saying, well, here's an opportunity for me to help my children with their conflict resolution skills. This is what should be happening. Of course, they're fighting over a toy. Children need to do that. Now I'm going to show them, now I'm going to help them. I'm not going to show them how to do it, but I'm going to help them. How? By keeping everybody calm and listening to each other. That's it. That's the entire role of parents. So similar to pretend play, where your role is not to take over, in conflict resolution, your role is not to take over. So how do you do this? Well, when you first come in, it's really important, if they're grabbing a toy from each other, it's really important to hold onto the toy. But not in a punitive way, like, oh, I'm going to take away this toy if you guys don't figure this out, if you guys fight over it. It's holding onto the toy and saying, wow, Moshe, you look like you want this toy, and David, you want this toy. Okay, let's figure out what to do. So that you're modeling that you're very calm and they can be calm, and we're just going to figure out what to do. Mommy's just going to hold the toy while we figure this out. And I'm here with you, to help you figure it out. So then, let's say Moshe, very upset, says, that's my toy. I had it first. So you're not going to objectively judge whether that's true or not. It may be completely untrue. It may not be Moshe's toy at all. Or you may believe that all toys, in your household should be shared, and you have the right as a parent to decide that. So it may be true, it may not be true. Either way, that was communication from Moshe's part that's really meant for David. It's not meant for you as the parent. So you as the parent, you're going to reflect that communication to David without any judgments, without any decision of who's objectively wrong or right. Because remember that it's the process that matters here. It's not the objective judgment of who's right or wrong. It's not a courtroom. It's a teaching, it's a learning experience. So you would say to David, Moshe said that it's his toy and he had it first. You're not telling David that you agree with Moshe or disagree. You're just telling David what Moshe said, because you eventually want to get to the point where your kids are able to have these conversations on their own. And they can't do that if there's a third person in the conversation. So you actually don't want yourself in the conversation. But you need to be there to keep them listening to each other. And the way that you do that is to reflect what they said to the other child so the other child can hear it. Because left to their own devices, they're just going to be yelling over each other and then start hitting each other, most likely. But with you there, nobody's hopefully going to be hitting each other, because they're going to be seeing that they're each getting a chance to say what they think and feel. Because when you say to David, Moshe said that it's his toy and he had it first, David's going to say, "Nuh-uh, I had it first." And you're going to say, "Moshe, David said he actually had it first." Now it's going to feel to you like, now what, But Moshe's going to have a response. Either it's going to be the same response, "I had it first," or maybe he's going to say the reason he thinks he had it first, "I had it first because I was playing in this room and you were," whatever he says, you're going to then say to David. Then whatever David says, you're going to then say to Moshe. And this is going to be a long process. So please be prepared for it. Hopefully, during this time of no structure, you have the time, some of the time, to do this. You don't need to do it every single time your kids get into an argument. If you're cooking dinner and you can't do it right now, you could take the toy away in, not a punitive way, and just say, right now you guys are fighting. I need to be cooking dinner. I can't help you right now. We're going to work this out later. Just as an example. So you don't need to feel that you need to do this all the time, but when you do have the ability to sit down with your kids and help them with their conflict resolution, that's when you would be doing this, and you would be expecting that this is going to take a long time, a really long time possibly. And the outcome doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it gets, you're having this conversation, it's going back and forth, and you get to supper time and there's no time left to play with the toy actually, because it's time to put the toy away and go to supper. That's fine, because it was the process that was important to your children. And you can say to your children, okay, we'll continue this tomorrow. It's the process that's important to your children. The process of what are they learning during that time, during that conversation. They're learning how to have a conversation without resorting to fists or yelling about an issue with another person on which they disagree. That's a very important skill. It's a skill that a lot of adults don't have. And the more that you help your children do that, the better they're going to get at it. And just think how well that's going to serve them in their lives, in their family lives, in their work lives, with their friendships, in every possible situation. So that's the first thing they're learning. They're also really working on their emotional regulation during this time, because you're helping them stay calm, but they're staying calm. And even though if you weren't there, they would be resorting to fists and yelling, they're learning how, they may be yelling a little bit, they may be raising their voice, but with your calm voice reflecting back and forth to each child, they're helping themselves go from upset to calm. And that's what self-regulation is, or we like to call it co-regulation. It's happening with the adult and the child together. So they're learning how to stay calm, frustration tolerance. It's so frustrating. I think I had it first, and to the child, if what true or not, that's what they may believe. And you're telling, and I just want to play with this toy right now, and I have to wait and wait and wait while you tell me this, and then I try to tell you that, and you're trying to convince me, and I'm trying to convince you, and it's so frustrating. And we probably all know adults who have a lot of difficulty taking part in those kinds of conversations, which can be frustrating, and just get angry or lose their temper. But if a kid learns how to do that when they're young, when they have those conflicts with their siblings, and an adult is there to help them stay calm and help them learn how to have those long conversations, then they're learning so much from that interaction that the outcome doesn't matter. So don't be focused, and this is just true for all of the things that you're going to be trying to do to help your children during this opportunity of no structure. Don't be focused on the product. Be focused on the process. Say to yourself, well, we just had a 40-minute session of kids tolerating frustration, talking to each other when they're angry without using fists, trying to reason with each other, thinking creatively, negotiating, coming up with reasons that I'm right and you're wrong, which is good thinking skills, logical thinking, and reasoning. And these are the skills that we want our children to develop that are really going to take them far in life, more so than their math facts. Parents are wondering a lot, how should I be structuring my day with my child? Should I have a time that they wake up and then they get dressed and then, they eat breakfast at such and such a time, and then, they have reading time, and then they have playtime, and then they have exercise time? And what I say to you parents is, please, if you can move away from that, just move away from it, because they've had plenty of structure in their lives, probably from the time they were 2 years old, right? When we first sent them to school. So what they need now is to be able to benefit from the lack of structure, because we don't have schedules to follow now. We don't need to get them to school so we can get to work and we can, go to the store and buy the thing, whatever things we had to do in the past, we don't have that anymore. So now we have the opportunity to let the day flow. We have the opportunity to let the kids wake up when they wake up, stay in their pajamas, play, and for us to just join them, connect with them, and the benefits, besides for the benefits that they're going to be getting in terms of their creativity, their executive function, their self-esteem, their emotional regulation, all of those benefits that they're going to be getting from having that opportunity to play, and especially the opportunity to play with you. Besides that, just the benefit of them deepening their relationship with you. There's no relationship that's more important than the parent-child relationship, and that's given so little emphasis in our culture. Like, you're lucky if you get 10 minutes, if you have 10 minutes for your child. Maybe you can read them a bedtime story. But now we have time, just time, to deepen those bonds. They're only going to be your children for, X number of years, and then they're going to go off and leave you and have their own lives. And this is the time when they really want to connect with you, the time when you can bond with them. And we have such an opportunity now. But to bond with our children, it's going to be a much more powerful bonding experience for the children if the parents are following the children's ideas and letting the children lead. Because if the children are leading, then we are getting a window into their world, what they want to be playing, what they're interested in, what emotional themes are they working on, are they trying to process that we can join them in on. So it feels to the child like the child is having a personal conversation with you. The kind of conversation that you would have with a best friend, where you would, unearth your deepest desires and your deepest fears and your wishes, and you just feel so close to that friend because you just connected. That's the type of bonding feeling that your child has when you just kind of relax, go with the flow, and take the role in the child's play that the child wants you to take. Your child will feel as connected with you as she could possibly feel. And that's going to, besides for just deepening your bond with your child, which every parent wants to do, and making your child, you and your child just feel so close to each other, it's also going to just make your child a better behaved child all around, which we all need right now with our children home all day, because your child is going to be a child who feels that I'm important to my parent, to my mother, my father, my mother. I'm just going to say mother for right now. My mother likes me. She thinks my ideas are interesting. She wants to join in on my ideas. That's different from loving me, right? She likes my ideas. She likes me as a friend. She's my friend. You know, she plays with me the way that I want to play. And it gives the child such a feeling of empowerment that fuels the child for the rest of the day, because now the child doesn't need to fight in order to get your attention, because your child is already getting so much of your attention. Or the child doesn't need to fight to act out emotions that have been bottling up inside of them, because you've sat with them and you've processed their emotions with them, and now they feel more calm. They feel more regulated. When children have really good pretend play sessions with adults, especially their favorite adults, their most important adults, they feel really good afterwards. They feel calm and regulated. They've processed their emotions. It's like they had a great therapy session. But for adults, our best therapist might be, a professional. But for kids, it's you. It's mom and dad. That's the best therapist in the world. But you're not being their therapist. You're being their friend, their best friend. And that you still need to be a parent who sets limits and does all of the other parenting jobs that you have. But all of those jobs are going to be so much easier if you take the time to enter their world and join their world and let it go for as long as it goes, if you can right now. I know that some parents are working from home, and for those parents, it's really, really hard, and you have less time for this. And of course, I understand that you need to do what you need to do for your family. But on the weekend, or whenever you do have the time, or for parents who have a lot less structure in their lives right now and have a lot more time, let it go however long it goes. You don't need to worry about when lunchtime is. Lunchtime will come when everybody's hungry. Oh, let's have lunch now. That's okay. It's okay to let your day flow. We couldn't do that before because we had jobs to get to, and the kids had school, and there were practices and extracurricular activities and so many things to do. And now we don't have all of that. It's okay to let your day flow. Now, a lot of what parents may be seeing at home now during this time is kids being maybe more emotional than usual, maybe acting up more than usual, because they're out of their routines, and also because it's a scary time. Adults are panicking. There's all this talk of illness in the air. It's strange even for us adults what's going on. For kids, it feels really weird. A lot of their relationships have been put on hold. They don't have that time with their peers. If the adults are stressed, they can sense that. They can feel the adult stress, and even if they don't completely understand why, it affects their behavior. So we're dealing with kids possibly now who are just a lot more emotional, at least for some kids. And how to deal with that may be a little bit counterintuitive, because we need to see the moments where our kids are being emotional as opportunities to help them go from upset to calm. That's something we call co-regulation. A lot of people know the term self-regulation, which is the assumption that the kid is going to use a tool to calm themselves. Like you teach the child, you take a deep breath, or punch a pillow, or take a walk, take a sip of water. There's all sorts of tools that children are given. The problem with that is that really the best way for people to get calm, we are very social as people, we get calm through relationships, or interrelating with others. So when you're really upset, you call your best friend, you talk it out. By the end of that conversation, you're just feeling so much better. So kids are the same. When they're really upset, very often, they're in fight or flight mode. The primitive part of their brain that's reacting to danger. And their adrenaline is high, their heart's beating fast. They are not going to be logical and rational and reasonable right at that moment. Probably not logical and rational enough even to say, oh, I think I should take a deep breath right now, because their brains are telling them that they're in danger. A lion is attacking you. This is not a time to take a deep breath. So that's why these strategies end up failing for a lot of kids. What kids really need when they're in fight or flight is they need your help as an adult, learn how to use their relationship with you to get out of fight or flight mode and get more into their frontal lobes, that logical, rational part of their brain. So how they will do this is counterintuitively by you joining them in their emotional state. And to explain this, I need to give an example. So I'm going to give an example of a very young child, but this applies just as equally well to older children. So let's say you have a young child who wants cookies, and he's had enough cookies, but he doesn't think so, and he's screaming, right? So how do you deal with that situation? So if you can, you have some time to help your child, you come very close to your child at eye level, and you say to your child, you want those cookies right now. You want me to give you those cookies right now. Now that very often, if your child's not too far gone yet, is going to calm your child down, because the purpose of their yelling and screaming, or the reason they're in fight or flight, is because they feel alone in this need for cookies, and they do not think that you share their emotional need for those cookies. But you have just shown them that you completely get what they're saying. But notice that when I did that, I did not use any emotion labels, right? I didn't say, you're feeling really angry. That would be like a logical analysis of the situation. But remember, they're not in their logical part of their brain. So this is not a good time for logical analysis. We could do that later. This is a good time for joining them so that they can see their emotion reflected in you, and that takes the edge off of it. That makes them feel somebody else shares this with me. I feel a little more calm. Maybe I'm not in danger. So very often, if I say that to a child, you want those cookies right now? They calm down enough to say, yeah. And they're still insistent that they want those cookies, but now they're not shrieking as loudly anymore. You start seeing a movement towards more calm. But it doesn't end right there. You know, it keeps going. You know, they say, yeah, because I'm so hungry and I only want cookies. And you're going to have to, as long as they're still upset and they have not reached the point of being completely calm yet, you resist the urge to say, like, well, you already had a lot of cookies, because then you're doing the opposite of joining them in their emotion. You're invalidating their emotion, and that's going to send them right back into fight or flight. Because, you know, if you say, there's no lion here, but the child feels there is a lion here, in other words, the danger, there's no danger here, there's nothing for you to be upset about, that just makes you feel, yes, there is. I need to prove to you that there is, and the child's going to scream louder and louder. So what you need instead to do is show your child how much you get what they're feeling. So that means you join them, and you join them for as long as it takes. So you're going to keep repeating for them, but your tone of voice, your affect has to reflect their emotional state. So it can't be a sympathetic tone, because a sympathetic tone does not show that you understand them. It shows that you feel bad for them, and that's not what they want. So if the child would, you know, if you would say to the child, oh, you really want those cookies. I know. I see you really want those cookies. That's going to make them scream more, because they don't feel their emotion reflected in you. Their emotion is anger. But if I say to the child, you want those cookies right now, I've shown them that I know how they're feeling without using an emotion label, which is, the logical analysis. That's the frontal lobes. But I've shown them in a way that appeals to the primitive part of their brain. So now I want to spend some time talking about children with special needs. And I know if parents of children with typical needs are stressed right now, the stress for parents of children with special needs is really through the roof. And parents are just so worried about their children regressing and so worried that what they're doing for their child is not enough and is not good enough, and that they need to become their child's speech therapist and their child's occupational therapist, and they're given all sorts of homework and jobs by their child's therapists that they're wondering how they can possibly meet while still taking care of their children and running the household. And I think one of the reasons that it feels so stressful for parents is because a lot of what's being asked from them is not really what's best for them in their relationship with their child at this time right now. And somewhere parents are sensing that, but parents have been trained not to listen to their instincts, but to listen to professionals. The professionals know best. And because parents are not feeling like they're allowed to tune into their instincts, they feel guilty when they're not completing these therapy exercises that they're being given by their child's therapist. But really, that is not what your children need right now. What your children need from you is the same thing that the typical children need, but just at a higher level, at a much more emphasized level. So if children with typical needs need a lot of comfort and knowing that they feel safe and that they can feel safe and loved right now, children with special needs who tend to be more anxious, more disturbed by changes in routine, more confused, they are going to need a higher dose of that, even more comfort and just love and knowing that everything is going to be okay. And you have to have the time and the space for that and not feel like, well, we have a schedule to follow when we need to do our speech exercises and we need to do our fine motor exercises. This is so much more important because a child who feels calm and secure and safe and loved is a child who's going to be ready to learn. And a child who is stressed is not going to be able to learn. And a mom who is stressed is not going to be able to teach. So that really comes first. And then beyond that, the skills that will really move development forward for your special needs child are skills that are often not able to be accessed in a school or a group environment, a large group environment, the way that schools are set up. Or it's just not skills that are focused on in the schools for children with special needs, because there's a lot of structure and there's a lot of focus on compliance and following directions and learning what the teacher has set out for the child to learn. But if children with typical needs nowadays have a hard time filling up their time and knowing how to play, children with special needs, because of their special needs, have a really hard time with this. But that's what really moves development forward. Without the ability to tap into their developmental needs, the child with special needs is not going to be able to let their developmental needs guide them into what they need to be doing next in order to move their development forward. And that means all of their development is completely dependent on a professional or adult or a teacher telling them, okay, now do this, now learn this, now do that. And that's not really how development works. What we need is for the child to be able to be a partner with us, even if they can't completely take charge of this on their own. They need, with our help, to learn how to move their development forward. children with special needs need unstructured play to work on the skills, the social and emotional skills that will move them forward in their development so that they can become children who are attentive during interactions with people, invested, interested, curious. So it doesn't feel when your child is with you like you're pulling teeth. And the advantage to taking this approach as opposed to working on maybe higher level skills and not shoring up those foundational capacities, the advantage to this approach is that you will have a child who is much easier to teach and much more independent in learning about her environment on her own, because children are, typical children are good at learning from their environment without an adult having to do too much, because they're sponges, they're curious, they want to know, they're invested, they want to see what mommy's doing, what mommy's talking about, they're attentive. So these are all skills that children with special needs are often lacking in. They're not solid in these skills. And by working on those foundational capacities, you will be creating a situation where your child can then move herself forward in her development on her own. So let's talk about these foundational capacities that all children need to pass through, to master, and children with special needs are often lacking in. These are based on the 6 stages of social and emotional development that were discovered by Dr. Stanley Greenspan and Dr. Serena Wieder, who founded the DIR floor time methodology. And the first 3 stages are the most important stages. They're the stages that I'm going to be talking about, because there's so often gaps for children with special needs in these first 3 stages, and without having really solid skills in these first 3 stages, you have a child who can learn, but it's always frustrating, and they always need special instruction in order to learn, because they need special incentives to pay attention, and special attention in smaller classes, and so many accommodations in order to pay attention and learn and be interested and be invested. And what we would love is to have children who don't need all of these accommodations and who can do better on their own according to their potential. So the first stage is regulation and shared attention. And that's a child who's calm, who has the ability to go from being upset to being calm within an interaction with an adult. And also a child who's attentive, who is aware of your presence in the room and who's paying attention to you. And we're not talking about the type of attention that teachers are requiring in school, where the child is sitting in a desk and having to act as if he's attentive. This is a type of attention where the kid is really interested, curious, motivated. So it has to be genuine, it has to be real in order for it to be true attention, because otherwise, if you try to force attention, you're not dealing with a child who's really able to stay with the interaction and learn from the interaction, because the attention is not really there, it's just being faked. The second level is engagement. Engagement is when a child is invested in the interaction. So they're not just attentive, but now you can see from the gleam in their eye, from their facial expressions, their body language, their gestures, they are really so motivated by the interaction and invested in the interaction, and they can stay with the interaction for whatever age expected period of time that's expected for their age or their level of development. So that's engagement. And there you have a child who's so motivated to learn, so easy to teach, and this is where children need to be to really benefit from from teaching, from learning situations. The third level that I'm going to talk about is circles of communication, and that's just back and forth interaction. But the important thing about it is that it's in a continuous flow, without breaks, without distractions, without feeling like you're having to reel the child back in. The child is just there with you, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And kids are supposed to be able to do this 30 to 50 times or more in a row, just a continuous flow. So this could be verbal, but it can also be nonverbal for kids who are not verbal yet, or even for kids who are verbal. So it could be peekaboo games, anything, any type of gesture, any type of body language also is part of a back and forth interaction, imitating facial expressions. The important thing is that it be going back and forth in a continuous flow for many, many, many turns in a row. Then a child has mastered that stage. So many, many, many children with special needs have gaps at these early levels, even if they have much higher level skills. They may be reading, they may be writing, they may be able to do math problems, but you still may have a child who's really inattentive, a child who's constantly getting distracted. You have a hard time, having a complete conversation with that child. So that child may be lacking skills at these early levels. So the way to work on these early levels is by first giving your child space, unstructured time to see what they will do. And then whatever it is that they're doing, whether it seems, like appropriate to you or inappropriate, you would join in. So unlike a child with typical needs, your child may choose something to do that seems a little bit less purposeful to you. And this also depends on how impaired your child is. So your child may be flapping his arms or running in circles, or lining up his toys, or whatever it is that he's doing. You would just join in without judgment, with enthusiasm, with interest. And parents are worried, well, I'll be reinforcing this, inappropriate behavior. But what happens is when you join in, it takes the focus off the inappropriate behavior, which previous to this, that was, the reinforcer. That's what the kid was motivated by. And now you've taken the focus off that as the reinforcer, and now you're the reinforcer. And that's what we want, because we want the relationship to become more important to the child than the, less purposeful behavior that he was engaged in. So by joining in with a lot of interest, with a lot of enthusiasm, now you've shifted your child's focus without any strong arm tactics, without any tough love. You've just shifted your child's focus from that activity that was less than purposeful to you. And that's what we want, because how do we achieve the first three levels? The child's attention needs to be on you because he wants to be attending to you. So how can we get him to want to attend to you? Only by you joining him. Then it's interesting to him. If you're lining up the toys with him, he wants to see where you're going to put the next car. Now he's attending to you, and that's true, genuine, shared attention. And engagement comes when he starts laughing and having a really good time with you, or you can see from the gleam in his eye that he's really excited when you take your turn lining up the cars. And then the back and forth interaction will start as you start handing each other cars. So you're working on these first three levels, and yes, you're having to do it by joining him. But what happens is, as you do this, the child becomes more and more motivated by his interactions with you. And rather than you having to initiate, he starts initiating more. He starts seeking you out more. Let's line up the cars together. Great, and then he starts tolerating gradually more and more little changes in the play. You don't have to keep following it exactly as he intends. You can start making little changes once you see that he's really invested. Don't do it before that. First get him really interested, really invested. Then you can start making little changes, and then gradually the cars can start driving places before they go back to their line. And you take baby steps, small steps, pulling him out of his comfort zone into showing him other possible ways for him to play. And if he's attending to that and able to start imitating that, then that's learning. So what you've done is you've helped your child become more competent at those first 3 levels. And by doing so, you've created a learner, a child who's starting to learn from you, starting to imitate you. And learning is imitation or joining in or watching. That's how you know that your child is learning, because that's how children learn. They learn from their most trusted adults, watching them, imitating them, and joining in. So I hope all of you parents of children with typical needs, parents of children with special needs, have gotten a little inspiration from this video to follow your children, give them unstructured time, see what they want to do, join in, deepen your bonds, have fun together, and know that at the same time you're working on those really important social and emotional skills that your child needs for his future success in life. Okay, I'm very interested to hear if anybody has any questions, any comments. You can email me at connectwithfloortime@gmail.com. You can leave comments below. Everyone, please be healthy and stay safe.